Chromebooks were first introduced to schools in the US in 2011 as a pilot program from Google. The next year, Chromebooks became easier for school leaders to manage and facilitate exams and for students to share, with the introduction of kiosk and manage guest mode in Google Admin Console. Chromebooks became available to schools in Australia, Canada, France, Germany, Ireland, and the Netherlands in 2013. By 2014, Chromebooks were the #1 best-selling mobile computing device for education in the United States and were produced by all major device manufacturers. In 2016, Chromebooks were being used by over 20 million students and educators around the world. The first Chromebook tablet was introduced in 2017. And the following year, teachers found innovative ways to administer quizzes and tests using Google Workspace for Education. With the launch of locked mode in Google Forms only on managed Chromebooks, teachers saw full control over their assessments, while students were kept focused and free of distractions. In 2019, the Chromebook App Hub launched, becoming the go-to destination for educators looking for apps and lesson ideas. And by 2020, as the world transitioned to remote learning, 40 million students and educators were relying on Chromebooks for school every day. In the last 6 months, Chromebooks have been the #1 device globally in K-12 education and have made their way to classrooms around the globe, giving teachers and students limitless possibilities for teaching and learning.
Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar in which we're going to focus in on the use of Google Chromebooks and this webinar focuses on getting started with Chromebooks. So hopefully if you are new to using Chromebooks or if it's your first time, this is the webinar for you. My name's Andy Caffrey. I'm a Google certified trainer and Google certified innovator and I'm joined today by Kat. Hi Kat.
Hi. Hiya. My name's Kat. I'm a Google certified innovator, trainer and coach.
And Kat's going to take us through some of the sections later, but also keeping an eye on the chat as we go. And as we go through today's webinar, if you've got any questions you want to ask, if there's anything you're not sure about, feel free to pop it in the chat. At various points, we're going to take questions from the chat and answer those. So if there's particular things you want to know about using your Chromebook, particular questions you've got, if you're converting over from a different device, this is a great chance today to get your questions answered in the chat. So we'll dive into the questions from the chat at various points through today's webinar. The webinar today is going to focus on Chromebooks, as we said, and it might be nice to get started to find out what other people have got a favorite Chromebook. Maybe you're on your first Chromebook, which is why you're watching this. So you've got one you particularly like, but if you've got a Chromebook you love, feel free to pop it in the chat. We'll see whether any particular favorites come up. Kat, what's your favorite Chromebook?
I'm a big fan of the Lenovo 500E. I like the fact that you can flip it over and use it as a tablet, but that's my maths teacher coming out because I like being able to draw on it.
So has that got a touch screen? Is that a touch screen one with
the
stylus?
It's got the touch screen and it's got the convertible, so you can have it as a laptop or you can use it as a touch screen. So I use it a lot with Jamboard when I'm teaching maths lessons. So I'm a big fan of stylus and Jamboard for that. What about you?
I still like my 2015 Chromebook Pixel. So I've got a Chromebook you can't buy anymore, which is getting a little bit old now, but it's still the best computer I've got. Now, in fact, interesting fact about today's webinar is that all of us running the webinar today, doing the live stream, we are all on Chromebooks. So we are all delivering this webinar through Chromebooks. I use Chromebooks all the time, and I have done actually through a lot of the end of my teaching career as well. So welcome today. As we go through today, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat as we go. If not, we're going to dive on into the content. So we're going to focus in on 4 big areas in today's webinar, and they are.
We're going to start looking at the hardware to start off with. Can you let me speak a little bit, Andy?
Yeah, go for it, Kat.
We're going to look at the keyboard and trackpad, so the hardware behind how everything works. And then we're going to talk through how you access files on the Chromebook, get some information about how to do all the different things people like to do. Then we're going to go a bit of a dive into apps and how you can use some of those apps you like. And then my favorite section of everything is accessibility.
Thanks. So those are the 4 sections we're going to go through today. And we'll get started with this key question, I suppose, that you might be asking. What is a Chromebook? So there's some key things about Chromebooks that make them different to other sorts of devices. And so they run an operating system called Chrome OS. So Chromebooks don't run Windows or Mac OS. They run their own operating system called Chrome OS, which is based around the Chrome internet browser that we're all probably quite familiar with using. Because they're running their own operating system that was designed to be used on Chromebooks, it means they've got some other features that we can see on the screen there. So they're very quick to start up. When you press the power key on a Chromebook, within the next 8 seconds, the device should be started up. As a result of the way that design works, they're more secure to use. And so they work, the technical word is they work in a sandboxing mode. So you work in different windows. And when you've got the Chrome browser open, that browser can't access other parts of the device, which makes them more secure. And as a result of the way they're designed, they have a long battery life. So lots of new Chromebooks have a sort of 10, 12-hour battery life, which means you're going to get through the school day without necessarily the need to charge in the middle of the day. So some key features there of using Chromebooks. So I suppose the first question people might ask is, how do you get onto and sign into a Chromebook? And usually when you first get a Chromebook, the sign-in page looks like this. First time you use it, you get that standard Google sign-in page, and you need to sign in with a Google account, and that might be an account you've got at your school. So if your school is registered for Google for Education, then that's your school email address is what you're putting there. Or if you're a personal user, it could be a Gmail account you're putting at this point. So a Google account you're putting in to access your Chromebook the first time. And then once you've been on the Chromebook once, it's going to remember who you are, most likely. So it'll have your name on there. And then for future times, you're just putting your password back in. So it'll have your little face to the people that have used the Chromebook, and just put your password back in that space. Down the bottom of the page there, you can probably see that there's some additional buttons. And some of you may see these, and some of you may not. It varies because your school can decide to remove some of these features. But we've got the Browser's Guest button and the Add Person button. So Add Person fairly obviously adds another user. So if you've got a Chromebook and you're in a family and there's two of you, you want to share it between you, that's fine. And Browser's Guest allows you to log a Chromebook in without signing into a Google account. Now, if you're on a school-based device, most schools remove the Browser's Guest option because we want to know who our students are. We want to be able to track what they're doing. So we remove that option as we go through. And so that's some of the key things on the sign-in page when we're signing into the Chromebook. Now let's look, once we're on, at some of the big differences. And I'm going to ask a question in the chat here to see if anyone knows. But if you do know, write it in on the chat. So what's the key difference about a Chromebook keyboard? So if you think you know the answer to that, pop it in the chat.
I'm interested to see if anybody spots it.
Yeah, now to be fair, Kat, I had a Chromebook for probably 2 years before I realised the biggest difference, before I even spotted the biggest difference, because I think we all become, don't we, almost blind to what we're using, and so I just didn't even stand out this major change to me.
Do you know what? I didn't notice it until you pointed it out to me this weekend. So I'm doing really well.
Click on the slide. It's now on the screen. So there's the keyboard on screen. And there was something that I didn't notice for at least 2 years of using Chromebooks. And as Kat said, she only picked up this weekend. And it's a fairly major difference about the keyboard. So if you think you know what it is, I'm going to give you a second or two more to pop it in the chat. Or maybe no one wants to admit to seeing this.
Well, I mean, there are a few things that people notice early on. So I always find when I'm teaching in a primary school quite often, people notice the lack of caps lock because a lot of primary school teachers, it's a go-to button for them.
So we've got no caps lock button over on the left-hand side there, but that's not the major one. Anything else, Kat, you spot that's different, apart from the big one?
The other one that people tend to point out to me is that they haven't got a delete button. Now, for someone like me, I use backspace all the time, and I actually never, ever use a delete button. But definitely I've had people in training say, where's the delete button? What do I do?
Yeah, so we have it there. And Jess in the chat has mentioned that the top bar is different. So across the top here, the bar at the top of the screen is a bit different in there. So that is one of the changes. But the main change, and this one that as he said, no many spots, is that on a Chromebook, the keyboard is lowercase. And so the letters we're looking at there on a standard Chromebook keyboard, if you haven't plugged another keyboard in, they're all lowercase letters. So like A, S, D, F on that middle line, they're written in lowercase, whereas on a standard keyboard, they're in capitals. And there's some evidence to suggest with some of our younger learners, that makes it easier to use because it's the way they're used to seeing those letters. And so rather than the capitals and the lowercase. So it's a lowercase keyboard, which is the main difference. But we've also picked up on some of the other changes there. So let's talk about some of the other buttons that we've got. So we're going to watch a little film about what the search button does. So that is what the search button is. So and Kat mentioned this earlier. In place of our caps lock key, I forgot what it was that is normally there. In place of our caps lock key, we have got the search button on a Chromebook. So when we press the search button, it brings up a little bar at the bottom of the screen, and then from that point on, it goes into the search mode. I'm on my Chromebook screen there, bringing to search mode. When the search bar comes up at the bottom here, and we've got a few options. We can type in what we're looking for there. We can hit the Google Assistant button to do a Google Assistant search, or we can press the further up button to get into the apps and things that we've got on our Chromebook. So the search bar allows us to go into that space. Now, there's always someone who goes, that's lovely, but what I really, really want is caps lock. I like searching the internet, but I don't want my caps lock key back. So if you want to change what that button does, you can do that. So on my Chromebook, on the bottom right-hand side, I can go down to the settings area and press the settings cog. And then when the settings page comes up, here it is. When the settings page comes up, I can just search for keyboard to see what the keyboard keys are doing. And here are all the keys on the keyboard and what they've all been sort of set to do on my Chromebook. So the search at the moment is set to do a search, but if I want it to do something different, here are my options. So if I want to, if I really am missing caps lock, I can turn that search key back into a caps lock key, or I can do something else with it. So I have the option to change what all those keys do, but I'm going to leave my search at search because I've got used to it. I like it that way. But if you ever want to change what your keyboard keys are doing, you go to the settings area, bottom right hand side, settings cog, and then down onto the device settings to change these keyboard settings here. So that's the keyboard, or that's the search key on my keyboard. Let's get this back up on screen. There are other keys and other functions we've got. So across the top here, as I think Jess noticed in the chat earlier, our top bar is different. So those keys do different things. So we get asked, back to, so going from top left to top right, we've got the escape key, and then we've got a forward and back button up here, the forward and back. And our forward and back moves our web pages forward and back. And the thing about the Chromebook is designed to be used for a lot of web browsing, a lot of internet activity. That's what these keys are to do with the internet. So forward and back. The refresh button reloads the page we're on. And then we've got the screen buttons. So this one makes things full screen, or not full screen. If you are full screen, drives it back out again. And this one shows me all the screens I've got open on my device. I can flick between different tabs that I might have open. And my brightness keys, my volume up and down keys, my mute key, and then the power button. Some devices have a power button on the keyboard, some don't. Some have it on the side. It just varies from Chromebook to Chromebook on the power button. So there's our top line of keys. As Kat has just mentioned in the chat, don't forget, if you've got any questions about any of this, pop questions in the chat as we go.
I'm multitasking.
So, we get asked this a lot. I'd say the most common question once we've introduced the keyboard is, how do you take a screenshot on a Chromebook? And so to take a screenshot, we can use the control button and the Windows selection button, which is that button up on top line, and that enables us to take a screenshot. Let's look at a short video about how that works. So spooky as that was, the shift control key and the Windows selection key allows us to take screenshots of things on our Chromebook. And if you press control shift and the Windows selection key, that allows us to select the area. So imagine we're trying to just crop a little bit of screen, get a little image of something. We can do that with control shift and the Windows selection key. So those are our keyboard shortcuts when it comes to taking screenshots. It's one of the, I think as a teacher, it's one of the most popular keyboard shortcuts that we see people using on the Chromebook. And so that's taking screenshots. But we sometimes get asked, well, that's great, but what about screen recording? So I'm going to just come out of my slides for a minute to show a recent update that we've had to Chromebooks. So this is my Chromebook. This is the home page on my Chromebook. And as I said before, if I press the control and the Windows selection key, it takes a screenshot, big screenshot, and control and shift in doing it allows me to select an area. And you can probably see at this point at the bottom now, I have some additional buttons. And so this was a recent update to Chromebooks. Rather than just taking a screenshot now, I've got screenshot, which is the default option. So if I don't do anything, it's going to carry on taking a screenshot. But by pressing those same keys now on the right-hand side, I've also got screen record. So down at the bottom, my screen here where my mouse is, I've got the option to have a screen record. And again, once I do that and I press draw my little space for the area I want to record and then press the button, as you see, it does like a 3 2 1 countdown, and now it's recording my screen. So it's videoing my screen. Chromebooks have the built-in screen recorder now. It's just recording away. When I've finished, I just click again to stop it. I'll stop it over on the menu. And we can now get out of that. Oops, stop that there. And now that screen recording is finished. And it's recorded into my folders. We'll talk about folders later, but that's been added in as a screen recording. So although there are still lots of great third-party tools you can use for screen recording, like Screencastify, it's now possible to record straight on the Chromebook. Another place you can see those options, because someone just asked that, is by pressing the little sidebar at the bottom here, bottom right. And as you can see, there's a screen capture button now within that side menu on the bottom right as well there. So to see those screen capture buttons, you can see there, screen capture. I'm going to click it. It takes me back to this page again. So it should be in your menu bar on the bottom right-hand side, screen capture. And you can choose between video and still images down there as well in the menu bar. So that's screen recording on a Chromebook. My slides back on again.
It's such a great feature to have.
Yeah, it's nice to have it built in, because you used to be able to do it through extension, but it's nice now that we've got something native that we can do that there. Screen recorder, we talked about that. The next thing that all Chromebooks have down the bottom below the keyboard is the trackpad, the area where we can move our finger and move the mouse on the screen. I'm going to be honest, when I first got my very first Chromebook, I went and got a mouse and I plugged a mouse into the USB port and I just carried on using a mouse because I was used to using a mouse from previous devices and that just felt natural to me. And then over time, I've got more used to the trackpad. And now I tend to use the trackpad more, but it took me a while. So the first thing is, if you don't like it, you could just plug a mouse in. Chromebooks work with mice plugged into USB ports. So you could do that as an option. But you have a trackpad there as well, built in to enable you to interact with the screen. And in terms of the trackpad, there it is, down the bottom, below the keyboard. Probably, I would say, the most asked question about Chromebooks is, what would you say that is, Kat, that you probably been asked the most?
How do you right-click?
Yeah, how do you right click on a Chromebook is probably the most asked question because there's only one trackpad. And so we often talk to, when I'm working with students, it's a 2-finger click. So it's clicking with 2 fingers together at the same time on the trackpad. When I work with younger students, I often describe it as bunny ears because it looks like a bunny rabbit, bunny ears, and with bunny ears, we click the Chromebook and it performs a right click motion onto the device. So if we want to right click something to select it or right click the screen to give a menu come up, then 2 fingers, right clicking on the trackpad, bunny ears on the trackpad is how we right click. So that allows you to click or right click. If we use the 2 fingers and then we start to move them on the trackpad, that performs a scroll. So pressing 2 fingers on the trackpad and scrolling up and down. And if you're on a Chromebook now, you can try it. But our video will scroll up and down if you're on YouTube. Then that will enable you to scroll a screen up and down in that direction. And then finally, moving left and right scrolls left and right. We've got a little video of this. So 2 fingers left and right, that scrolls the screen left and right in that direction. So 2 fingers left, 2 fingers right. It moves, sorry, it doesn't scroll the screen. It moves the pages forward and back in that direction. Similar to the forward and back keys at the top of the keyboard.
That video's made me want cookies now.
Made me a bit hungry. You got distracted by that video. So we've gone through there, keyboards and trackpads, and effectively just the basic use of the Chromebook from the powering on point to logging in. It's a really good point to jump any questions in. Anything in the chat, Kat, that's come up?
Yep, there was one question there. I know you answered the first question about where the option was.
Debbie asked, didn't she, where can I ring the screen option? Is that, do we think about screen records?
Yeah, I think that was during the screen record section.
So let me just come out of that. Any questions box? No. So let's go back onto the thing. So in terms of doing a screen capture or a screen record, the first thing to get into it, we're doing the same keyboard shortcut as a screen capture. So that's the Shift and the window selection key, or the Control Shift and window selection key, depending on whether you want the whole screen or not. But you can also access it on the bottom right hand side in the menu. So we can get it down here in screen capture. That's the first thing. We can get to it either way. Once we're on it, it comes up like this. There's a little box at the bottom of the screen here. This might be the bit you were asking about, which is how do we change it over? I'll just take your question off so we can see my little box at the bottom. Oops. I've now got to select an area. Give me a second because it won't let me come back in here to do this. Oh, I managed to get stuck in the screen record mode. I'll have to just do that. Right, okay, so that's the question off. So now I go to the bottom, I press screen capture, I draw an area. As you can see, this little option at the bottom here, it toggles between the two. So because I moved it across earlier, it's now on screen record. And if I move it back, that's on screen capture. So it's this little sort of control panel at the bottom of the screen that I can change between the two options, between capturing a still image. I just want to capture an image of what that looks like, or if I want to capture a video. It's on the bottom bar here. And again, some buttons here then that allow me to get the full screen, or just an area I've selected, or just a tab. And then there's a little settings area as well if you need to go into that area there. So I hope that answers the question for Debbie. But don't forget, as we go through today, Debbie's saying it's not showing. So that's a relatively new feature, isn't it, rolling out to Chromebooks? So what I might suggest, not now, because you're in the middle of watching a video, but at some point in your own time, restart your Chromebook. So not just sign out, but do a full power off and power it back on again. Because when the Chromebooks update, the new features just come the next time you do a full restart. And I do still work with that, but students in particular don't ever restart the Chromebook. They just sign out and sign in again. So do a power and restart. You might find that feature will drop out into your Chromebook because it's only a few weeks.
I think the newer Chrome OS, it does it automatically without needing to be turned off. But if it's a certain age, then it won't.
Yeah, it may well need that. Yeah. So moving through our sections, we're now going to talk about how we work with files on our Chromebook. So how do we move, how do we work with files on the Chromebook in terms of those things? Because we saw we had a file there. So I'm just going to get my files window up. Give me a second. So files on Chromebooks all live in a files area. And as you can see on my screen, I've got a little icon down the bottom that goes to the files. I've got it pinned to my little taskbar at the bottom here. But if you haven't got it there, you can press the little search button, move into your big menu, and somewhere in here, you will see a files area. So there it is there. It's that little blue button there within the files area. So if you've never pinned it, it'll be there. If you're in there and you want to pin it, you can right click it. Now mine's already on the shelf, so I've got unpin. But if you ever want to put something from down here onto the little bar at the bottom of the screen, say if you're coming through this menu, right click it and pin to shelf. Mine's already on the shelf, so it's already there, and that allows me to press the button and get to my files area. So here's my files area on the screen, and as you can see, I've got some different categories within this files area here. So within the My Files, you've got downloads, and that's, I would say, the one I probably use the most. The downloads area, where when I'm on the internet and I download something, I take a picture or a screenshot or one of those little videos I've just talked about capturing, and it all goes into this downloads file here. And then you might have these other file areas, so the Linux and Play files, and then below that I've got Google Drive, and on mine I've got OneDrive as well, so multiple drives down here. So you can, from the files area, get straight into your Google Drive, move things around your Google Drive, drag and drop things between them. So if you've got something in downloads, I can grab it here from downloads. Let me go and grab the screenshot that I took earlier. Oops, not that folder. This screenshot here that I took earlier, which was a screen recording. I can grab it and I can drag it into my Google Drive if I want to suddenly put that in a file for a folder for my class to see. Maybe I've got a class a folder over there. So I can start moving things around using sort of standard file management type tools in that way, if I'm moving through things that way. If you click a file in here and you press the space bar on it, it opens up a little preview window of that file. So when I'm in the files area, if I press the space bar, it just tells me a little bit about the file. And in this case, the video is actually playing through. Here's my little video playing, because that's the little video of the screen capture I got earlier. So pressing the space bar just allows me to look at what these files are, plays through any videos, shows me any images, gives me a bit of file information as well. So it will natively do it on the Chromebook without me having to move it anywhere else. So that's my file areas over there. If I've got third-party things, I've got little SD cards stuck inside my Chromebook. I can move around that as well. At the top of this files area box, I've got some other options, some other ways of viewing my content, because quite often when you come to files, you know what you're looking for. You're coming in there because you've got something. So I can filter it by video. So that just finds my video files. I can filter by image, by audio, and by recent. So again, it's just showing me different ways of filtering that search. So recent I find useful. What have I just done? What was I on a minute ago? What have I just captured a screenshot for? And again, it's again showing me stuff here that I've been on recently, like the slides and the screenshots and so on. So that's the file area and where files live on Chromebooks. Have we got any questions coming, Kat, about file areas on Chromebooks?
No questions at the moment, but please do keep letting us know if there's anything that you want to know more about. We're happy to share and tell you what you need to know.
If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat as we go. I managed to, during all that demo, I managed to close the slides down. So I'm just going to open my slides back up again. But now's a great time. In terms of files on your Chromebook, Kat, do you tend to put things in Drive or do you put things in the downloads area?
I tend to move them from the downloads area into my Drive so I can access them if I move to a different device or if I'm on my phone and I want to just quickly check something. So I'm sort of more of a Drive purist, I guess is the best way to put it. I like to move things off the actual device. And
do you keep things in folders or in one big area on your Drive?
Oh, I'm a folder person.
There's definitely two schools of thought around folders, isn't there? And
I have to be organized. Everything's got to be put into folders and subfolders, and I need to know where it is. Got to be nice and searchable, color coded as well. And
color-coded folders.
I've got to be list view. I can't do grid view.
We are almost there. My slides are slowly loading back up again as we go. So yeah, feel free to ask questions as we go in the chat. So up till now, we've been talking about files and folders on Chromebooks. Up next, we're talking about, nearly there on my slides, just scrolling down.
While you're loading them, Andy, we've just had a question through.
Yeah.
I can't see a preview when I click the space bar. Why is that?
My first thought, the first thought about that question is it a Google Drive? It might be a Drive file. So if you're in Google Drive and you press spacebar, it's slightly different. So are you in the downloads area? Are you in files on the Chromebook? That's my first thought. And secondly, are you pressing the spacebar on a file that it can open or view? So is it an image or a document or a thing, as opposed to what would we call it? An exe file or a strange file you might have downloaded? So those spring to mind. It's got to be something that's viewable by the device, and it can't be a Drive file. That's in
it has
Drive.
to be physically on the computer you've got.
Yeah.
Physically on your Chromebook, as opposed to on the internet.
So I hope that helps. We will see. We'll find back from our Holland, see if that works. Next, we sort of touched on this a little bit, but what apps can you use on a Chromebook? So we're going to focus in on now. How do we add some functionality to our Chromebook? If you've got a Chromebook, it's got the Chrome browser on by default, but what other things can we bring to that Chromebook? What can we add to that Chromebook to add things in? When it comes to apps on Chromebooks, or tools we're going to use on Chromebooks, they tend to break down into, I would say, 4 main categories, because Chromebooks run things from different places. So the first thing is we have something called web apps, and they live in the Chrome Web Store. And by default, that's probably what you're used to using. A lot of the things by default on the Chromebook, like Gmail, those are web apps. When you click the Gmail button, it takes you to the Gmail website, and you're running the internet site, and that's what a web app is, going on the internet to see and use something. Chromebooks can also run things from the Play Store, from Android apps. So we have the Play Store as an option for getting apps, Google Play Store. I'm going to show you all these in a bit more detail in a second. Chromebooks can run Linux apps, a more advanced version of more advanced tool for specialist apps. And then finally, Chromebooks in the Chrome browser can also use Chrome extensions to add additional functionality to the apps, to the device. So we've got a whole range of different ways we can bring these additional sort of tools in and use them on our device. So I'm going to start off by just going on the internet and going to the Chrome Web Store. I'm being very lazy and I'm just Google searching it for now. I could have got it from my bottom menu as well, but I just thought I'd bring the Chrome Web Store up this way. So here I am on the Chrome Web Store homepage. And as I said, one of the things we can do is we can put on the web apps, and those live in apps on the left hand side here. And so that takes me to this area where there are all these apps that I could use. Now, some schools will filter what can go on a Chromebook, so you might not see the full list. I'm on a Chromebook that's totally unlocked here, so I've got lots of different things I can put onto my device. But if there's a particular tool I want to use, I just saw Google Keep go past at the top here. Maybe Google, I decide I want Google Keep on as an app. I can click it, and once I click it, it gives me a little page. And as you can see, this one's already actually turned on my device, which is why it says Launch App. But I have the ability to add my apps at this point. When you add an app to a Chromebook from the Chrome Web Store, it goes into this little area here. So it becomes a button in our bottom area, in our menu bar area at the bottom here. So here are just some things I've added, or some things that I put on there, added as apps. And so every time I click these buttons, it's effectively taking me to that website. It's loading that thing up. It's allowing me to get to that thing quicker because I've got it on as a web app. And so first port of call, Web Store, great place to check out and add some additional functions to your device. If there isn't the app you want in the Chrome Web Store there, the next place to look is probably the Google Play Store. So Chromebooks can also run Android apps, which you're probably familiar with. If you've got an Android phone, you're familiar with sort of the Android App Store and the fact there are millions of Android apps out there. So I also have the option here on my device, as well as going to Chrome Web Store, which is that button, I've got the option to go to the Android App Play Store. And so when I click that, the Google Play Store loads up. Now, if you are on a school-managed device, then these can only be added by administrators. So if you're on a school device, my Google Home's talking to me. If you're on a school device, you can only add these if you're an administrator. Some of you will click that button, it won't work. Some of you won't have the Play Store as an option if you're on a school device. If you're on a personal device, or if it's been unlocked, you can get to the Play Store. And again, here I'm seeing a list of various Android apps, which I could choose to add to my device. As a general rule, I would say I would bring in, if there's a web app, use the web app first. If the web app doesn't exist, if there isn't a web app, that's when I tend to come to the Play Store to have a look if there's an Android app instead. Because some of the Android apps are designed for mobile phones, so the screen's a little bit small, but there are some great Android apps you might want to use out there as well. And we'll talk about those in a second. So route 2 is the Play Store for adding things on. And again, I could find something here. If I wanted, here's some that are designed for Chromebooks here, because it knows I'm on a Chromebook. So if I wanted ArtFlow, which is an art thing, again here, it's a sketchbook. I can go on there, I can press install, it's going to install that to my Chromebook to use. So that's adding things from the Play Store. Second option. The third option is Linux apps. I'm not going to spend any time in today's webinar talking about Linux apps, other than to say that if you can't find the app you want as a web app, and then you look in the Play Store and it's not amongst the millions of Android apps, there is an option to run it as a Linux app. That's quite specialist. That's why we're not going to go into it today. But just be aware there is that third route of Linux apps. And then finally, the last sort of additional way of bringing functionality in is through Chrome extensions. And Chrome extensions live in the Chrome Web Store along with our web apps. So when we were back on this homepage of the Chrome Web Store here, we saw we had extensions and we had apps. So both living in that area there. And a Chrome extension is often seen as a little button up on the top right-hand side here. And it does something, it interacts with my browser to allow some additional functionality to my browser. Now would be a great time to find out. So if you've got a Chrome extension that you really love, that you think is great, that you're already using, and want to put the name of it in the chat, now would be a great time to find out what Chrome extensions people are using. So if you're already a Chromebook user and you've got a Chrome extension that you love, pop the name in the chat. I'll pop over there in a minute. We'll see what Chrome extensions people are suggesting. But here I am in the Chrome Web Store, and this is where I can search my extensions. And so I can put them on. Kat, do you want to give me a Chrome extension to search for?
Oh, now you're asking me
But
questions.
you think it's great for teachers?
Oh, good one for teachers. Well, I'm a maths teacher, aren't I? So I'm going to have to say Equatio.
Right, I'll search it. It might already be added. I might have already added it. But let's have a quick look. Equatio. So I have already added Equatio. So what does Equatio do, Kat?
So if you've not already seen Equatio, first thing to say is it's free for teachers to use, which is really important. And it just allows you to add maths and science things easily to a document. So for me as a primary school teacher, having interactive fractions that you can put in, then, decide how big it is, add the label, write 3/4, and it puts it as a fraction instead of having to, join underline and write it underneath and hope it looks okay. Just makes everything mathematical look a lot nicer and easier to do.
Yeah, so that's Equatio. So if we were trying to add this to our device, we'd come here to Equatio. Now, I've already got it added, so my button now says remove from Chrome, but it would say add to Chrome, and we can add it, and it would appear as a little icon up there. So Equatio is a popular extension. Some other extensions coming up in the chat, aren't there, Kat?
Yeah, we've got a few there. So Loom is ever popular for screen recording. I know you use Loom a bit, Andy. And Moat, definitely one of our more popular ones. That sort of hit the ground running earlier this year or last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. And what does Moat do?
So Moat allows you to record audio clips in comments within any of the Google Workspace tools, or most of the Google Workspace tools. So you can add them even within Slides and Classroom. So I know the schools that I work with have said that they really love the fact that they're not having to spend hours typing comments, because they can just leave a, oh, well done, that was great, voice message. Much more informal and friendly, especially for primary level, I think.
Yeah, so the important thing to note, I suppose, from this section is these tools, whether they're coming in as a web app, particularly as an extension, they're giving us some additional functionality to the Chrome browser so that we can then do more with our device. And so it's certainly worth looking at there. And if you were to Google search 10 great Chrome extensions for teachers, There are loads out there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues, actually, because sometimes there's almost too much choice. So there is another great resource that I like to talk about. I'll just open up now, which is the Chromebook App Hub. And again, I'm just going to Google search the word Chromebook App Hub and go to it this way. So if you think about all those apps and things we've talked about, the problem there is that those app stores have got thousands of apps in. Each of them have. The Google Play Store has thousands of apps in it. And so the Chromebook App Hub is a collection that's been designed by Google for Education to help teachers find appropriate apps for use when we're using Chromebooks and we're doing teaching and learning. So cutting away all those other things like Netflix and Twitter and all the other apps that are maybe not as relevant to us as teachers, and really focusing on educational apps. And so the Chromebook App Hub is a great place to go if you're looking for apps. And when you land on it, this is the home page. It sort of breaks it down to two ways. So one way is to search simply by app. So you can just look at the apps and you can filter these by age range or by category and so on. And again, it's finding different apps here that are useful on a Chromebook. Or the way I like to use it is through ideas. And on the ideas page, these are teaching and learning ideas written by teachers for ways in which the apps have been used. So we can come down here and we can actually filter by subject at this point. So I'm a geography teacher, so I'm going to filter for the geography ones. And again, at this point, what this is giving me is it's giving me some lesson ideas using some of the apps that are in there. So these are lessons that I could do. This one's using ThingLink, which is an interactive 360 image tool, and so on, that I could deliver to my class using some of the apps in there. So if you consider it a more education-focused app hub than the Play Store or the Chrome Web Store. And that's the Chromebook App Hub. Definitely worth a look if you are new to Chromebooks and wondering, how do I do lots of things? I also come to the App Hub when I work with certain subjects and teachers are asking me questions about, how do I do this on a Chromebook? You know, I'm a music teacher, I'm using a Chromebook. How is that going to work? And so often I would direct people to the App Hub to help them find suitable software and tools for them to use.
I like the sort of micro level you can go with the filtering, so you can sort of look at which ones have good accessibility features and things like that.
Yeah, and there is also, for the network managers watching us today, there are also notes on GDPR compliance and legal compliance for the apps as well. So if you need to get that, is this compliant? Can I use this in my school? What happens to data? That's listed within the Chromebook app as well. It's a great source of information for some of those questions that sometimes network people might ask you if you're asking to use a new app in your school. And so that's taken us through adding apps to the device. Next up, I'm going to hand over to Kat for her specialist topic. Because one of the reasons why I love having Kat on these webinars is because accessibility is one of your favourite features. So I think we're going to switch over to your screen. Is that all right, Kat?
I think we need to use your slides just a little bit longer.
Oh, we do? A little bit longer. I'll put my slides on first.
I will yell when I want my screen on. So I really love the fact that Google have prioritized accessibility on the Chromebooks, and they're really keen to share those features. So I've learned quite a bit about the accessibility features over the last few years, just because it's something I'm interested in. I think they're great. So we're going to have a quick summary of the different accessibility features available on a Chromebook, and then I'm going to show you how to get onto them and how to get them working on your device. So if we can have a look through, please, Andy. So the first ones are Chromevox and Select to Speak. Chromevox is a little orange box that appears around everything and explains what's going on your screen. So that's really useful if you've got a partially sighted student. My son has an uncanny ability. He's not yet 2, but he has an uncanny ability to turn on Chromevox on our Chromebooks repeatedly. So the Chromebook starts talking to us. And then obviously Select to Speak, as you would expect, you highlight some text and it tells you what it says. So again, really, really useful features if you've got a partially sighted or even blind student in your class. And if we carry on, we've got a few display features you can use. So as we know, some students need better contrast on a screen. So you've got the option for high contrast. You've got either the whole screen magnifier. And again, this is one that gets turned on quite often accidentally. So I will make sure you've got the accessibility option in your menu so you can turn it off easily. So the full screen magnifier allows you to zoom in on the screen, or a docked magnifier puts a lovely bar at the top of the screen which means it will magnify that one, whichever section you hover your mouse over. And you can also automatically manage screen resolutions and text size. And what I think is really important to mention when we're talking about this is if you set this up on your Chromebook and then log out and log into another Chromebook, all of these features follow you. So if you've put on the full screen magnifier and you have to use a different device, the full screen magnifier is there straight away as soon as you've logged in. You don't have to go and turn it back on again. And I think that's really, really good to know. If we carry on, Andy. There are also a few bits and pieces around the keyboard and text input. For somebody who's got fine motor control issues, we have sticky keys, which means that you, instead of having to hold down shift and tap a button, you can use sticky keys, which means that it remembers what you've just tapped and allows it to follow through. So it's like pressing shift and T, but it does it one after the other instead of at the same time. You can bring up an on-screen keyboard, so you can use it as a touch screen if that's easier. I know dictation is one of Andy's favorite features of accessibility. It's not just for people who need to use it, it's for people who like to use it as well. And obviously, I'm sure most of you have seen that in Google Docs, you can do voice to text, but actually with the dictation tool on the Chromebook, you can do voice to text anywhere you're using it. And that's really, really useful to know. And you can also highlight the object with keyboard focus when it changes. So what that will do is highlight, I forgot what that does actually.
Yeah, it just highlights the bit you're on. I think that's where that comes from. I think I might have voice type. I think I might have been doing a voice type demo when I was typing that in.
I was going to say, I don't think that makes sense. And then obviously highlighting where the cursor is when you the text caret is where you click to type, and it highlight that. One that I forgot to mention actually on the previous one is enlarging your cursor, which I think you can see on Andy's screen. He's enlarged his mouse cursor and put a red ring around it as it moves so you can follow it more easily. And again, I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So we carry on. Oh no, that was on the next one. I'm obviously having a Monday. So having the large mouse cursor is obviously really useful to be able to spot it. And one of the new things is that you can both make it large and change its color. So you'll notice that Andy's there is green. I don't want to do green, so mine's a different color you'll see in a moment. And this highlight the mouse cursor is great because as you move the mouse around, it just gives you a nice red ring to make it obvious. And then the automatic clicks, it means that if you hover over something that can be clicked, it will do a sort of little countdown timer and say, are you sure? And click it for you. So you, again, if you've got that fine motor control problem, you've got that ability to click without needing to. Is there any more? Oh, yeah. So again, with audio options, sorry, I'm near a train station. I think you just heard the train horn go off. You can, so some people don't like stereo audio. That's not great. So you can turn that off, and you can also have a sound that plays when you start up the device, obviously just to alert yourself that you're using it, and turn on captions during Google Slides, during Meet. There's lots of options around captions there, which is great. And then finally, you've also got the option to add in a Braille device. So that can be a secondary device that you plug in via USB or Bluetooth, and that will automatically enable Chromevox, so that speaking as you are doing stuff. So that's really important to know that you can do that. So I'm going to bring up my screen in just a moment, if I can ask Rachel, or if I can ask that to happen. Maybe. Thank you very much. Sorry, minimize that. So in my dock in the corner, you can see I can select, and actually I've got accessibility already turned on here. And if I click on that now, you can see that I've got all of these different options of the Chromevox I mentioned, the select to speak, the dictation, high contrast mode, all of these different features are already there, plus some additional settings. So you can see I've got the large mouse cursor on and the highlight mouse cursor on. But that accessibility icon isn't automatically there. Actually, you need to go into the settings there. And then if you either scroll down to the bottom or just click on advanced, and at the very, very, very bottom, you'll see, so at the very bottom of this list, you've got accessibility. And you need to say there, always show accessibility options in the system menu. And once that's clicked, you will automatically get the accessibility in the options here. Otherwise, that won't automatically appear. And I always say to people, it's worth having that on. And I mentioned earlier that you've got this large mouse. If I just go back there, you can manage the accessibility features to a more high level by going into this menu. So you can see I can then select all those sliders. I can have a look at my mouse and keyboard. You can see here I've got my mouse on extra large. I can have it on small. And I can change the color. So there's a few default colors built in there. I know there's extensions that mean you can turn your mouse into a flamingo, but I prefer just to keep it a nice color. And as you can see, this circle here to highlight the mouse cursor. And again, that's useful if you're just doing a demonstration. So you've got this full menu within the settings where you can do lots of different accessibility changes. But as I said before, as long as you've got that slider across, you've got the option then to access the menu here with accessibility, and that gives you those options to access them very easily. And I'm just going to hand back over to Andy actually and let him have a quick talk about dictation, because I know that's one of his favorites.
It certainly is. As you said earlier, Kat, one of the reasons I love the dictation tool is because I'll just get my screen up. Is because it allows me to type on anywhere on the internet that I am. So I'm going to just load up a new browser window here on the Google browser, and because I've got again I've gone into the bottom right hand side menu. I've got accessibility like you had in there, which is this one here. As you can see, I've gone through, and the only one I've got turned on is dictation. So I've got dictation turned on in my menu. I can now put this wherever I want to. So we can go on the Google search bar if I want to here, and I can just type in bananas. I'm making up some words here, and it will just put those words into my bar, and I can then search and do it that way. So the point is I can dictate anywhere. And so I can dictate in Google Docs, but I can also dictate into a Google form. Or if someone says, here's this specialist thing, we need to write all of this stuff into it, I can just put my cursor in there, click that little button bottom right, makes a little ping noise. I just talk into it and it just types it in for me. And I find that still a really efficient way of being able to access and put things into my device. So I think accessibility tools are for everybody. And that's why I find them really useful. So yeah, that's the using the dictation tool there in the search.
One of the ones I quite like actually is the on-screen keyboard, because if you've got a touchscreen device, you can do handwriting and it will guess what you're trying, or interpret what you're saying and turn it into text. And that's quite nice if you want to practice your handwriting whilst still not being particularly strong enough to be able to use that as your main input, or want to convert it into a digital format. So
if you've got any questions about accessibility or any of the other topics we've covered, feel free to pop them in the chat as we are approaching the end of our webinar today. Before we do that, I'm going to talk about some additional resources that you might find useful. So I'll just put my slides back on.
Well, you're doing that, I was going to say there were a couple more people mentioning their favourite extensions while you were talking earlier. I can see text help, read and write, I think is the extension there that's a popular one. I did see one from Jess, but that seems to have gone.
Yeah, so there are a range of extensions you can use, certainly on the Chromebooks. So let's talk about some additional resources, and then if anyone's got any questions, now's a great time. So as I'm going through this section, now's a great time to get your questions in, because we've got sort of 5 minutes left, which gives us a good bit of time to answer any Chromebook specific questions you've got. So now's the sort of final call on questions. But in the meantime, some other things. This event that you're watching right now is one of a huge number of webinars that we are running to help schools who are using Google for Education and Google Workspace for Education. And you can access that at bit.ly/GFE UK events. So if there are other events that you want to go and watch, Kat, next week you are joining us with a case study from one of the reference schools.
Yeah, I've got a show and tell from Colchester High School. Looking forward to that. I've got some really great content there.
So if you want to see how some schools are using Chromebooks and other devices, you can join the show and tell webinars that tend to take place on a Monday afternoon. So that's all on the GFE UK events website. We've also got a couple of really good resources out there for use. One is Teach From Anywhere website, teachfromanywhere.google. Originally called Teach From Home last year, but now correctly renamed to Teach from Anywhere, wherever we may be in the world, being able to teach our students. It's a great resource hub for remote teaching. And of course, it's been around for a long time, but the Google for Education Teacher Centre at g.co/Teacher Centre is a great place to learn about the different Google products, Chromebooks themselves, the certifications for level 1 and level 2 certified educator, and the programs that sit above that, like Google Certified Trainer, Coach, and Innovator. So lots of additional information there in the Teacher Centre. As always, at the end of the webinars, it would be great if we could get your feedback on today's webinar. We'll pop the link in the chat for you, but it's at canopy.click/CB. So it would be great to get your feedback. But I also did say that it was a great time to ask questions. So we've got some questions coming in now, I think, from my request earlier. So this is a great chance to get your questions answered. If you want to do the evaluation form, that's great. We're now going to move into Q&A mode. So first question up, Kat.
Yeah, I've just seen a question there from Debbie. Can two teachers use the same document whilst teaching without editing each screen?
So use the same document whilst teaching without editing each screen. So do we think that's two people on the same document at once, which is obviously fine?
Yeah.
Let me jump across. We could probably use my slides as an example for this. So, and I'll just bring them out of slide mode. So here I am in my Google Slides, and I suppose you could say, perfectly using this for teaching right now. And this can be shared with multiple people. And I can see right now Kat's on it as well. And I know Kat's on it because her little face is at the top here in the bar at the top of the screen. So I know that actually there's another user on this. So firstly, can we have two people on the same document at once? Yes, we can have many people on the same document at once. That's perhaps the first part of the question. Second part of the question is about maybe editing that document. So when I press the present key, at that point, it sort of locks the slides to whatever format they're in at that point. I press present, and it will allow me to run my slides through at that point. If Kat's then got it open on her computer and she goes and makes a change, and I've pressed present and now I'm in present mode, if you like, I'm clicking away through my slides, it won't change on my slides unless I come out, and then it will update. So the reason for that is obviously you don't want someone changing your slides in the middle of you presenting something live. So for example, if Kat's editing the slides but I'm presenting, my slides stay the same. And that's a unique little piece to Google Slides, really, in terms of how slides works. In most other Google tools, if I'm in edit mode and Kat makes a change, we'll see that change live happening in edit mode. In fact, if I click on Kat's face here, it will take me to wherever Kat is in the slide deck. She's on the same slide as me, so it didn't move. But it will take me to wherever Kat is in the slide deck to show me where she is or what she's doing. So you can have two teachers on the same slide. They can be editing. If someone's presenting, hopefully that answers that question. I think that.
I mean, I guess the other option that would be to create a copy of the file if you actually wanted, for example, if it was a document that you wanted to edit during the lesson with the students.
So that's another good question, which is, okay, maybe you want different versions of the document. Kat wants a different version of this presentation to me. So I could go to then File and make a copy to have two copies. And the other tool that is really useful, and I'm glad this question came up, I think it's really useful in this, is if I go to File and Version History and see Version History, it shows me all the changes that have been made on this set of slides and when those changes were made. And so in the version history here, if I've gone into my slides and I'm gone, well, these are different. These aren't the slides I wanted. You know, I made a great set and maybe Kat's edited them. I don't like Kat's changes. Then I can go into version history and I can go back. So there's Kat making her changes. I can go back here to maybe before Kat made some changes. And I've got a choice when I go back in time here. I can either restore the old version. So if I'm like, I don't want Kat's changes, I want to change it back to how it was, I could do that. But also on the right-hand side here, I can go back in time, press the three dots, and make a copy of an old version. So if I'm like, well, Kat's made a change, but I want my old one, it's probably nicer for me to make a copy of the old one, and then Kat can have this one, and we can have two versions of the slides. So it could be about that question as well. So I hope that answered those questions from Debbie. another question coming in now. Is there a way of getting more than 20 slides on a Jamboard? What a great question. And so what I would say is not yet. Is that a fair answer, Kat?
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the moment, Jamboards are limited to 20. Within all the Google products, and let me just go to Jamboard because I'm trying to think where is the question mark in. I'm going to cheat here. In my Chrome browser, I'm going to type in jam.new, and jam.new makes a new Jamboard really quickly. To save me having to go to Google Drive and do all that, I'm just making a quick. So I'm here in Jamboard, and as you know, Jamboard works. It's a sort of a nice interactive touchscreen tool. I can come over here, and I can scribble on my page there. But Jamboard, when you're putting new pages, at the moment only goes to 20, which is, if you want a 21 slide presentation, very frustrating. Or if you're trying to use a slide per student in a class, it's annoying at the moment because, of course, there's more than that in the class. So one of the things you can do with Google, with all the Google products here, and here I'm in Jamboard, is press send feedback to Google. And this is a great way of saying to Google, I really think there needs to be more than 20 slides in this product. And as amazing as this is, very few people do this. Can we have more than 20 slides in Jamboard? So I've now put that feedback in. I press send, and then that feedback goes off to the people, and it genuinely goes to the team who work on Jamboard, and they will see that. And I'm probably not the only person that wants that. Hopefully Tim's going to do that in a minute and press the button and go and ask the question. And Kat, you can join us as well and press the button and go and ask it as well. And as things get more votes, Google then respond to what it is that their customers want, what it is that the schools using it want, and they will hopefully have more than 20 slides of Jamboard. So if you ever see that, always think about doing it that way.
As Jess has just said in the chat, you've also got the option within Google Classroom of making a copy for each student, so that they have their own version of it. And that can be a sort of workaround if you want to have each student working on their own page or their own Jamboard. So you sort of make your template and then assign it by Google Classroom with a copy for each child.
Yeah, and that could be another way. That's a good workaround until we can persuade Google to put more than 20 slides in Jamboard. Yeah. That, I think, has answered all the questions in the chat.
I think so, yeah. So,
other than a big thank you from me to Kat and to everybody for joining us today on today's webinar. I hope you found today's webinar useful. Feel free to join us all again, but we'll see you all soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining us.